Ghana's Chief Justice refuses to grant an injunction to stop house-to-house registration. Our top story in Caribbean Newsline for Tuesday, July 23rd. From the CMC News Center in Bridgetown, I'm Dawn Paris. Good evening. The house-to-house registration that the Ghana Elections Commission, GCOM, began last weekend has been given the green light to continue, for now at least. Acting Chief Justice Roxanne George Wiltshire on Tuesday refused to grant an order blocking the process, which is being carried out to create a new voters list in preparation for elections that must be held following the December 21, 2018 no-confidence motion passed against the government. But she's given the applicant, attorney at law Christopher Ram, more time to provide information to support his case for the injunction. In his application filed on Monday, Ram sought an order from the court compelling GCOM Chief Elections Officer Keith Lowenfield and/or the Commissioner of National Registration from continuing the house-to-house registration and to immediately take all necessary steps to hold general and regional elections on or before September 18th in compliance with the Guyana Constitution. The 90-day constitutional timeline kicked in on June 18th when the Caribbean Court of Justice, which is Guyana's final appellate court, upheld the passage of the no-confidence motion. Former Attorney General Anil Nandlal, who is representing Ram's interests, said while the Chief Justice did not grant the injunction when the matter was heard in chambers on Tuesday morning, the case is not over.
That her interpretation of the CCJ judgments is that elections must be held by September the 18th, 2019. However, at this stage of the proceedings, she did not find it fit to stop the exercise on the ground that she is not yet satisfied that the exercise commenced will prevent elections from being held on that date. As a result, she ordered a further affidavit to be filed by us to provide such evidence.
The Chief Justice also granted Attorney General Basil Williams, Lowenfield and GCOM until July 29th to file any affidavits and Ram's side until July 31st to reply to those. All legal submissions must be made by August 2nd when a ruling is expected. Thousands of people have already registered in the house-to-house exercise that covered communities across Guyana's 10 administrative regions. In the first 2 days alone, more than 20,000 people were registered. But the opposition says it's not cooperating with the exercise because it will drag on beyond the deadline for elections. But Attorney General Basil Williams says it's an offense for opposition leader Barrett Jagdeo to incite others not to cooperate with the registration process. Newsroom's Neil Marks reports.
The opposition leader last Saturday announced that the opposition People's Progressive Party would not be cooperating with the national house-to-house registration exercise. Today, the Attorney General, Basil Williams, had this to say about that position.
It's an offense to tell people not to register. You need to register. If you don't register, you're guilty of an offense.
What are the
So if someone incites you not to register, they're counseling and procuring you to commit an offense.
The opposition leader had stated that the decision of the Chief Elections Officer, Keith Lowenfield, to proceed with the house-to-house registration process goes against the July 12th ruling of the Caribbean Court of Justice, which urged GCOM and all the other political leaders to abide by the constitutional provisions of a no-confidence motion, namely elections in 3 months. The Attorney General said that despite the opposition of the PPP to the registration process, it is seeing results.
People are registering. Certainly in my area on the East Coast, all the villages, people are registering. So one thing is being said by the leaders, but the people on the ground, they are registering.
The Attorney General said that there have been reports of registration officers being threatened in certain areas, but that the security forces will be there to protect them.
In Haiti, a former executive in the Ministry of Economy and Finance, Fritz William Michel, has been named the country's new prime minister. President Juvenal Moïse announced the appointment of the virtually unknown technocrat in a tweet on Monday night, following the resignation of Jean-Michel Lapin, who he said he was stepping down in the interest of the country. He's expected to formalize the position in an official decree later. Media reports had earlier indicated that Moïse had approached 3 people to replace Lapin, who came to office less than a month after thousands of people took to the streets across the country demanding better living conditions and the departure of President Moïse. Moïse faces an uphill task now in getting his new nominee accepted by legislators. Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has explained why he rejected calls by the Law Association to invoke Section 137 of the Constitution to have a tribunal set up to investigate allegations of misconduct against Chief Justice Ivor Archie. He outlined his reasons in a letter to the association on Monday. Reports had linked the Chief Justice to discussing security arrangements for judges with a personal friend. He was also accused of attempting to fast-track Housing Development Corporation HDC applications for various people. Archie had denied discussing judges' security, but he admitted to recommending people for HDC housing. We get more from TV6's Urvashi Tiwari Rupnarayan.
The Law Association has in its hands the Prime Minister's confirmation he won't trigger a tribunal. He'd first made the announcement to the media on Thursday, but in the letter dated July 22, 2019, it says, quote, having considered the various complaints, I have therefore determined that a representation to the President is not valid, end quote. In December, the Law Association presented a report including legal opinions of 2 Caribbean judges supporting the invocation of Section 137. Dr. Rowley tells the Law Association he understands he's not the one trying to resolve a conflict, but to decide whether the question of the CJ's removal ought to be investigated. The PM's letter to the association comes with the publishing of advice from Howard Stevens, QC, which was published on the OPM's website. As it relates to the allegation that Chief Justice Ivor Archie used his position to influence judges in favor of an associate's private security company, the legal advice says the alleged WhatsApp communication between Dillian Johnson and the Chief Justice could not be verified and so does not provide a sufficient basis for concluding that Section 137 ought to be invoked. And as it relates to HGC complaints, the Prime Minister denies receiving, sending, or having any communication with the Chief Justice about any HGC house. He says, quote, clearly I cannot ignore this fact which effectively disposes this complaint, end quote. And as it relates to 2 other HDC complaints that the CJ used his position to influence the distribution of houses, while the Prime Minister says the Chief Justice is within his right to recommend housing, and quote, even if he went further than he ought to in relation to any applicant, it is unlikely that it could justify removal from office. It may have been a lack of judgment, maybe, but not misbehavior. In QC Stevens' recommendations to the Prime Minister, he said even if the Prime Minister still decided to go through with the tribunal despite his recommendation,
the region is warned not to be lured into a false sense of security regarding terrorist attacks. The details after the break.
Let's talk a little bit about flowers.
Okay, so we actually, so for flowers, flowers is actually, the video right now is the flowers coming out of my mouth, right? Which is like this kind of play on kind of rejecting the norm, right? Of like, you know, the Flowers song is really about like, bring me you, bring me an apology.
We got a breadfruit that has been peeled. There is a Christophine sitting on the table and 2 hairy coconuts.
Here from Steam St. Croix. Now and I saw the foil sitting in it. Now I think I'm seeing what is going to happen with this pot. And they're putting that coconut right into the smoke, the fire part of the smoker. But on top of the smoker, the calf's liver. So much happening over here. St. Croix on the top.
The return of Caribbean nationals from conflict zones where they participated in terrorist activities could pose a significant threat to the region. That's according to Calixtus Joseph of the CARICOM Implementation Agency for Crime and Security Impacts. But he says the number of Caribbean citizens traveling to participate in terrorist activities in distant lands has been minimized. Joseph was speaking in Trinidad and Tobago at a 3-day regional workshop aimed at preventing violent extremism. We get more in this TTT News Report.
Start of the CARICOM Impacts and Commonwealth Secretariat's Preventing and Countering Violent Extremism workshop at the Trinidad and Tobago Police Training Academy, Mr. Joseph said nothing justifies violent extremism and terrorism.
Technology enables terrorist groups to reach disenfranchised people everywhere in the world. A terrorist in Europe or Asia can provide instructions to an agent in Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Jamaica, or St. Lucia. One can be influenced, groomed, and recruited to terrorism on the internet. It is important to note that the vulnerabilities and gaps exploited by criminal organizations are equally susceptible to exploitation by terrorists.
Minister in the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs, Fitzgerald Hines, said the return of some foreign terrorists is at times inevitable. This, however, results in serious risks for the country.
Because when they go to these regions and they get the training they do, like riding a bicycle, you don't forget how to ride the bicycle. Once you learn, it stays in you. And they would have developed all kinds of horrifying techniques to hurt and to cause damage and danger and to cause panic.
Joseph said nothing could ever excuse the indiscriminate targeting of civilians.
Violent extremism and terrorism is at odds with our values and our vision of a safe and prosperous community. The threat we face from violent extremism is real. It is serious, it is urgent, and it knows no boundaries. While CARICOM has been largely spared the horror of terrorist attacks, CARICOM should not linger in the false notion that the region is immune from terrorism.
New details are emerging in Belize as investigations continue into the controversial Sanctuary Bay development. The FTC has launched a civil case against Atlantic International Bank, which was closed down after investors were scammed out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Several companies that did business on behalf of Sanctuary Bay were named in the suit, including Eco Futures Limited. At a recent press conference, Prime Minister Dean Barrow denied that Cabinet had discussed Sanctuary Bay, but he has since confirmed that Eco Futures Belize Limited was granted incentives for a project at Sanctuary Bay, but not Sanctuary Bay, the company. We get the details in this report from Channel 5.
The now infamous Sanctuary Bay real estate scam and the allegations made by the Federal Trade Commission against the Prime Minister and members of his government prompted Barrow to quickly rubbish the FTC's findings. The company Sanctuary Bay Limited came up.
We were talking in the press conference about Sanctuary Bay, and I'm sure there is a company by the name of Sanctuary Bay.
That company exists, and it was incorporated by the Prime Minister's law firm, Barrow and Williams, in 2005. During the press conference, PM Barrow told the media that Cabinet never discussed Sanctuary Bay. This 2011 confidential Cabinet memo, however, says that Cabinet did discuss Beltrade's request for Eco Futures Belize Limited to receive fiscal incentives for infrastructure development at Sanctuary Bay. Since the leak of the memo, the interpretation is that the Prime Minister misspoke.
Well, That is absolutely not the case. What has been produced is a copy of a cabinet confidential showing that indeed a fiscal incentive was granted to a company called Eco Futures Limited. I do see, having been shown the document, that there was, in terms of the location of the proposed development for which Eco Futures was being given a concession, that it said Sanctuary Bay, but that's not the same as saying that we gave Sanctuary Bay as Sanctuary Bay a concession.
But those two different things have seemingly become one, both part of the multi-million-dollar scam. According to the FTC's findings, Eco Futures Belize was also doing business on behalf of Sanctuary Bay, Sanctuary Belize, and the Reserve. The timeline, however, is not clear. The difference here, according to the Prime Minister, is Sanctuary Bay, the location, as opposed to the company.
Ahead of Newsline Sport, injury-plagued Andre Russell and an uncapped player included in the Windies team for next month's T20s against India. We'll tell you who else is in the 14-man squad when we return.
Make it what you want. Make it what you want. Make it what you want. Make what you want.
When is the right time to do an offer letter versus an employment agreement? Or do you do both?
Ideally, I would want to see my clients do both, or at least provide an offer letter to everybody. And there's a difference. They're very, very similar documents. The offer letter, however, is more what it sounds like. It indicates the position that you're offering the person. The employment agreement goes into more detail.
It's gonna be something special. We're gonna come together. It's a meeting of the island. There will never be a time like this one. We come to connect, share and invest. Turn the eyes of the world to CaribVision. Tell the cultures to come and bring the best. CaribVision the 14.
Well, it's time for sports. An injury-plagued all-rounder Andre Russell has been included in the West Indies squad to face India in the opening two 2020s, a month after limping out of the ICC World Cup in England. The 31-year-old will join experienced off-spinner Sunil Narine, who has been recalled to the side following a near two-year absence. Narine has not turned out for the West Indies since the one-off T20 international against England nearly 2 years ago. He's been dogged by injury and intense scrutiny over his action, but remains one of the finest bowlers in the shortest format. Guyanese wicketkeeper batsman Anthony Bramble is the only uncapped player in the 14-man squad. 28-year-old Bramble has been identified as the second-choice wicketkeeper in the squad behind Nicholas Pooran. He led Guyana Jaguars scoring in the last first-class season with 580 runs at an average of 52, but he struggled in the Super 50 Cup with 110 runs. All-rounder Carlos Brathwaite returns as captain, following Jason Holder's temporary lean on the side for the England series earlier this year in preparation for the World Cup. But there is no Chris Gayle, as the veteran left-hander will be plying his trade in the Global T20 Canada tournament, which bowls off on Thursday. Interim chairman of selectors Robert Haynes said the squad had been selected with next year's T20 World Cup in Australia in mind. The first T20 is set for Fort Lauderdale on August 3rd, with the second the following day. Jamaica's under-23 football team's dreams of representing their country at next year's Olympics have been taken away following a 1-1 draw in their clash with St. Kitts and Nevis over the weekend.
Everyone knew where the journey would take them, but it seemed that there wasn't a clue as to how to get there. It was a clueless ride from the beginning as they fumbled around and lost their way. And it's not like the signs weren't there. They were just ignored by those who went close. It was all about the Jamaicans, but not that St. Kitts and Nevis were perturbed, as they had things under control. And they didn't look like losing it, not even when Nicu Daly broke the deadlock. With the goal, the Jamaicans thought it was the moment that would change things forever. Well, they thought wrong, as St. Kitts and Nevis were back on level terms early in the second half, Giovanni Lake silencing the gathering. It meant the goal-shy Jamaicans would have to score again, but that was their Achilles heel. And as the game went on, it just never seemed likely that they were going to score. At least Jamaican fans got a chance to see Kyle Butler for the first time. Maybe he should have been given a longer run. With the game winding down, Lake should have added more to the Jamaicans' misery. St. Kitts and Nevis even got the last chance of the game, but it wasn't needed as the final whistle came much to the disappointment of the Jamaicans, but joy for their opponents as the Olympic dream was what it is.
First of all, we have to apologize to the fans, apologize to the sponsors. The result wasn't what we expected. It wasn't what we wanted, but the lads, they did their best.
And Coach Donovan Duke knows the buck stops with him.
We didn't produce the goods, and this is what football is about. I take full responsibility for the team not producing the goods, and it's football.
Going into the game, Coach Earl Jones vowed to end the Jamaicans' hoodoo of eliminating them from various competitions, and he got it spot on.
Yeah, we had to deliver, because why? I had to back my chats. And the guys, them, once I said, the guys, they moved, I said, until they move, they're going to move. You know what I mean? I pumped my energy to them. I mean, yes, very emotional coach. Everybody got a style, and this is my style. It works. I always get results, and I mean, yeah, because Jamaica is Jamaica. St. Kitts Nevis, small Twin Island Federation, and we have to step up at some point. And this is the turning point for us.
Staying with football, Mexico has been crowned champion of the Under-15 Youth Tournament hosted by Trinidad and Tobago after coming from behind to crush the host team 4-1 in their final game on Sunday. TV6's Vinod Narwani followed all the action at the Atto Bolden Stadium in Cuba and filed this report.
This was the start of the Under-15 Youth Invitational Tournament between hosts Trinidad and Tobago and Mexico. Following the corner, the Mexicans came close to scoring, minor scare for the home side. TNT was then on the prowl and pushed forward. The shot that followed was curled just over the top. But in the 6th minute, the boys in white scored following the set piece. The ball wasn't cleared away and Malik Khan made it 1-0. 10 minutes later, though, the Central Americans equalized. When the ball came across, the bicycle kick landed in the path of Alejandro Alcala, and he beat the keeper who got some part of the body to it. After being 1-1 at the interval, TNT came close on this occasion to regaining the lead following some neat passing. The shot was hit past the keeper, but it was off target to the relief of the Mexicans. El Tricolor also had a chance to go ahead for the first time, but the effort struck the woodwork. However, in the 75th, Mexico weren't to be denied. Javier Guerrero made the run, followed by the give and go, before displaying his adroit footwork and slotting the ball home, 2-1 to the visitors. Then it was all Mexico. Miguel Carrion in the 85th and Raul Chavez in the 88th scored a goal each, as this one finished 4-1 in favor of El Tricolor. TNT lost all their 3 matches. In the end, the tournament, which also involved Panama and Venezuela, was won by the Mexicans.
And Guyana's Under-15 women's team created history after winning all 4 matches of the CONCACAF Under-20 Championships. They beat Suriname 3-1 to secure their place in the round of 16 alongside St. Lucia.
Clean sweep of Group A in the CONCACAF Women's Under-20 Championship. Guyana finished its last game on 12 points with St. Lucia in second on 9. Playing their final group game against Suriname, the Lady Jags saved their best performance for last, dominating with authority, ending the match 3-1. Watched by a small but vociferous crowd, Tiandi Smith extended her good showing against St. Lucia, finishing the back of the net in the 6th minute, much to the appreciation of the local fans, inclusive of President of the Guyana Football Federation, Wayne Ford and company. Minute 51 was the timing for Guyana's second goal, this time after being awarded a corner and wasting no time. Niles Rowe's exquisite passing was converted into the goal, compliments of Tori de Nobrega, who did not disappoint, evading the keeper to make it 2. Captain Brian Desser added much flair, scoring from just outside the box, erasing any possible hope Suriname was mustering up. Meanwhile, Bermuda closed out on a high with their second win in 4 matches, while Antigua and Barbuda lost all 4 of their games. Jaden Sam.
Jamaican jockey Chavion Chow executed a clinical ride to win the 30,000 Canadian dollar Manitoba Mile Stakes aboard 4-1 Choice Deep Explorer as part of a double on the 7-race card last weekend. Going a mile in the contest for 3-year-olds and upward in race 6 on Saturday, the 32-year-old took the 8-year-old Chestnut Gelding to the wire by 1.5 lengths in a time of 1 minute 39.4 seconds. Chow had earlier won race 5 with 3-1 chance. The code is grey, making all the running with the 3-year-old Roan Gelding to beat the 3-year-olds upward by 3 3/4 lengths in a 5-furlong sprint. He now lies 4th on 23 wins in the standings. That's the sport. We'll be right back.
When IndyCar hauled to Motown, Honda hoping to keep the good times rolling. Honda's IndyCar stars had swept the previous 2 Motor City doubleheaders. Graham Rahal doubling in 2017. Ryan Hunter-Reay and Scott Dixon splitting the wins a year ago. This year, Mother Nature controlled Saturday. Severe weather delaying the start nearly 2 hours, causing the event to be shortened. Still wet when the green finally came out.
Let's talk a little bit about flowers.
Okay, so we actually, so for flowers, flowers is actually, the video right now is the flowers coming out of my mouth, right? Which is like this kind of play on, kind of rejecting the norm, right? Of like, you know, the flowers song is really about like, bring me you, bring me an apology.
Welcome to this year's 50th Caribbean Broadcast Union Assembly on the island of San Andres. San Andres is a small archipelago located in between Jamaica and Panama in the western Caribbean Sea. A lush, exotic island rich in culture, history, gastronomy, and breathtaking scenic views. Known for its beaches and 7-colored crystalline waters, the island of San Andres will be proudly hosting this year's event. CBU members will enjoy top-of-the-line accommodations for an unforgettable experience in San Andres, connecting Caribbean nations through this year's 50th edition of the CBU Assembly.
Again, the major developments of this day. Guyana's Chief Justice refuses to stop house-to-house registration. And in sport, injury-plagued all-rounder Andre Russell and uncapped wicketkeeper batsman Anthony Bramble included in the Windy squad for next month's T20s against India. Off-spinner Sunil Narayan has also been recalled to the side following a near 2-year absence. And that's Caribbean Newsline. For news and sport around the clock, subscribe to ColonNews.com, and for more of our programming, log on to CaribVision.tv and check out our YouTube channel. We'll be back here again tomorrow, but from all of us at CMC News, thank you for watching and have yourselves a good night.